Hello everyone, welcome back to Speaking Spurs and me, Kieran, talking all things Tottenham. And I'd love to talk about some positivity right now. I suppose there were some positive performances to take from the game against Aston Villa, but ultimately the result wasn't what we needed it to be. And we lost 2-1 in the Premier League at home in front of 61 and a half, a little bit more, 1,000 fans. It's becoming a difficult season now, isn't it? It's lucky we had such a good start. I'll talk about that in a bit. But Ange was forced into some pretty difficult choices. Before kickoff, 9 first team players either injured or suspended, which is incredible. You think about that, 2 players off of a starting lineup. Lots of players in different positions, missing centre-backs. You know, both our starting centre-backs, we were missing a few. Well, we're missing a left-back in Cess, a left winger in Perisic, a winger that can play anywhere across the line in Solomon. Richarlison is out, so that's an attacking option of anywhere across the front attacking positions, including through the centre. Both our starting midfielders gone. You know, suspension of Bazuma and Sarr with a little knock after international duty. So, yeah, you could say the odds were stacked against us before the game. So Ange had to make some pretty brave decisions. He went all-out attack, which I'm kind of impressed with, which meant we saw Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Dyer drop to the bench. He went for a pacey lineup, so I can't fault him there. 4 fullbacks in defence, not a single centre-back in sight. So that is Udogie at left-back, Porro at right-back, left-sided Ben Davies, and on the right side Emerson Royal. Completely understand why he did what he did. Needed the pace in there. Villa have got some pacey players. Ollie Watkins likes to get in on the break behind. So Emerson Royal was there for the pace. And for the most part of the game, I thought he did fairly well. But once again, we were undone for a little lapse of concentration, players getting tired. And that's just the way it is at the moment. We have to accept that. You know, whereas at Wolves, it was very much like we went back into the old Spurs. We were a bit timid in attack. We tried to hold on to the lead. This time round, we got the lead. We carried on trying to push, but ultimately Villa are a good side. We were at fault ourselves for losing this game because we should have wrapped it up before half-time. We had plenty of chances. Ange Postecoglou was shouting at the side of the pitch to try and urge everybody get upfield. I saw him telling off Davies a few times for delaying his passes to Bryan Hill. Now, Ange loves to get the ball moving quickly, get the opposition, drag them about everywhere. But Ben Davies hesitated a little with some passes, which really could have got us on the front foot. But that meant by the time the ball was played to Bryan Hill, we were very much under pressure. It allowed Villa to sit back into their shape to defend. But when you look at it stats-wise, you'd think we come away with a victory. We had 18 shots, 8 of them on target. Martinez was forced into 6 saves. We hit the woodwork twice. Sonny had 3 disallowed goals for offside. Now, you think if anyone's going to have disallowed goals for offside, it's going to be Richarlison, who's not available at the moment. But no, Sonny couldn't seem to time his runs just right. A couple of them were tight. We also had a penalty shout that wasn't really looked at long enough by VAR. That was an elbow on Bryan Hill, waved off too easily there. 62% possession for us, 564 passes to their 324. But those stats mean absolutely nothing if you can't put the ball in the back of the net. So the goal itself, Lo Celso scored a deflected shot. It was a decent strike. The deflection just helped on the way. But it was our former target, Pau Torres, that levelled things up. And then Ollie Watkins that secured the win for Villa. The 3rd game in a row where we've taken the lead and gone on to lose. But it's not all doom and gloom, because if you look at the Premier League table, thanks to our really, really strong start when everybody was fit, we are only 4 points off top spot. So just to put that into context, you have Arsenal, unfortunately, have gone top of the league with their late victory. They are on 30 points. Man City, 2nd on 29. Liverpool, 3rd on 28. Aston Villa, 4th, again on 28 points, only beaten by Liverpool on goal difference, and then us in 5th on 26 points. So despite the fact that we've lost 3 games on the bounce in the Premier League, and of that top 5 we're in the worst run of form, we're still only 4 points off the top. Now you think about this, we've got to play Man City. So I'm not saying we will with the amount of injuries and suspensions and stuff we've got, but if we beat them, that's 3 points overturned already. And that's how easy it is to get back in it. And you get those 3 points, and that puts us 3rd. theoretically, if Liverpool and Aston Villa were to lose their next games, we'd be below Man City on goal difference. But do you know what I mean? It is that easy to creep back into it, and it's easy to get our heads down after 3 losses, but it's all very circumstantial. Now, I can tell you that had we not had as many injuries and suspensions, I don't think we lose this game. We were all over them for the early part of the game. So it's hard to be critical of the team because they're tired. Again, I will say what I said against Wolves. There's a lot of them that had not had enough minutes, and Ange needs to hold his hands up and say, look, should have rotated them a little bit more. But plenty of disruption before kick-off with the amount of injuries and stuff. And then to lose Bentancur, who had such a torrid injury, came back, he's had a few minutes here and there, goes off on international duty, gets some really good minutes there. First Premier League start, only to be chopped down by a stupid Matty Cash challenge. Not too different from the challenge, if you remember, that he put in on Matt Doherty. And if you've seen, you must have seen the memes and stuff by now, pictures of Christian Romero standing up after the Matty Cash challenge happened. Bearing in mind, he got sent off himself, Romero, for a ridiculous challenge in the box. But that's one eye going, I'll take note of that, and in the next game I'm coming for you. But we should, as I said, should have put the game to bed in the first half. It was the finishing of our players that killed us, and Sonny's inability to stay onside, because Sonny's one of his goals that was offside. Oh, it was an absolute peach of a strike, curled from the left into the right hand top corner. But it was just one of them days where we just didn't have it in us. I thought some of the players that came in did well. I was impressed with Giovanni Lo Celso. Brian Hill tried, but it was a bit on and off for him. But both of those two ran themselves into the ground. Lo Celso was, I would say, was absolutely shattered. But it was just one of them games. Villa are a very strong side. You can't fault Unai Emery's ability to turn this team around. He's taken a team that had been quite average over the years and really, really turn them around. It was going to be a very, very difficult game, whether we were home or away. They made us work. But still, even with a very disrupted side, we were very much the better team for large periods of the game, and the stats show that as well. But we didn't sit back from the beginning. We came out flying. I mean, I thought we were looking great, and I think had Bentancur stayed on the pitch, it would have unlocked a few more things. And I'm not saying that Højbjerg did a bad job when he came on. I was actually quite impressed with him when he came on, but he just offers a different kind of game. But unfortunately, it did meant that losing Bentancur changed the dynamic of the game, took a little bit of pace out of it for us, because Højbjerg is naturally more defensive. And he did try and do things to go forward as well, and he has been much better at that over the last couple of seasons. But it wasn't Bentancur. And I don't think Højbjerg and Lo Celso complement each other as much as Bentancur and Lo Celso do. So let's talk about the players in general. So Vicario couldn't really do much about Torres' point-blank header, but he did make his first real mistake since arriving at the club early in the second half. He let Bailey's shot squirm through his fingers, but fortunately it bounced back off the post and rested against his leg rather than bouncing off it. He then kissed the ball in relief, but Watkins' clinical shot was just too good for him on the hour mark, and he then made a flying save from Luca Dean's free kick, and then again from Camara's shot. So overall, did all right, but that one glaring mistake luckily didn't end up in the back of the net. But overall, I think, Vicario has been brilliant since he's come on. He did make a couple of decent saves in this game, so not really at fault for the result. Porro picked out Udogie with an early ball over the top for a big chance, and I mean, when that happened, I was shocked that it was actually Udogie that was in that position, but yeah, just couldn't control it well enough to put it on target, put it over the top of the goal. Should have had a shot himself rather than trying to tee up Sonny not long after. He did get caught on the ball on the edge of his own box late in the first half. Sent a bouncing volley at goal in the second period that Martinez tipped wide, and then hit the left-hand post with a low shot himself. Constant threat for Villa's defence. Someone always at there to think about. And I've been very impressed with Porro, someone that a lot of people have written off early on because he wasn't a natural defender. But actually, his defensive work has been pretty good on the whole. Next to him, Emerson Royale playing as a centre-back. Made an important sliding tackle in our box in the first half. Although Watkins did breeze past him into space between him and Davies to score. But again, out of his natural position, he didn't actually do too badly. And I suppose one mistake in a whole game in that position, bearing in mind he's next to somebody that's not a natural centre-back, better in a back three. What can you say? It was going to happen at some point. Ben Davies next to him started brightly, some good interceptions, certain good intercepting headers, but lost Torres for the Villa leveller just before the break, and then sent a header at the other end onto the roof of the net. And you know what? Actually gets onto a few headers in opposition boxes. Doesn't score many, but he's a threat. But yeah, I just think next to Emerson Royale, the communication was never going to be the best between them for the whole game. Davies isn't the paciest, but he is quicker than Eric Dyer. So, what do you do? Udogie back in the lineup, lifted an early effort over the bar from Porro's pass, showed what he can bring down the left once again. Although some decision making that's a little bit hit and miss at times, but I think that comes down to age and experience, and then had less of an impact as the game wore on, and that is because we saw Villa grow into the game more, as more space was being created through our lack of energy as we got tired. Moving into the midfield, so Bentancur with his first start since February was playing really well, spraying passes around, put Porro away for a chance, and then on the end of that challenge from Matty Cash that ended his day around the hour mark. Around the half-hour mark. I wish he'd have been on the field for an hour. Then with him, Giovanni Lo Celso, remarkably, his first start since Nuno Espirito Santo's last game against Manchester United in October 2021. And I thought he was pretty good. He had the powerful, slightly deflected half volley from outside the Villa box to open the scoring, and he really celebrated that. You could tell it meant something, and I thought he stepped up as our playmaker, and most of what we did that was good actually went through him. So who else in midfield? So Dejan Kulusevski playing in a deeper role than we used to see in him. He can play many roles. He's physically built well. He's good on the ball. He's relatively quick. He showed plenty of quality. Teed up Brian Hill for an early chance. He then curled a shot himself just wide. And then in between he had a great chance to score, but curled his effort off the left-hand post when he could have just slotted it home. So a little bit disappointing there. He then burst up the field on the second half break before playing a ball that Johnson couldn't quite slide home. Never stopped running or creating. Deserved more from the game, really. And I think it's just a good showing of the versatility of Kulusevski. Then moving into the attacking positions, Brian Hill with his first Premier League start since April. He had an early chance after running onto a Kulusevski back heel, but the keeper saved it. He looked bright, albeit with a few moments when he should have shot himself instead of trying to find others, and I think that just comes from a lack of confidence. Had he been playing more regularly, maybe he'd have took that on. Still young as well. He did put in a great cross for Sonny that the South Korean just couldn't quite get his head to. Positive display, but just needed the right decision to be made in key moments, and I think that's only going to come if he plays more. Then Sonny through the middle, played Kulusevski in for a big early chance. Curled home a shot before the break, but flagged offside. As I said, that was a really good shot. In between, he was inches away from getting his head on a great Brian Hill cross. Had a third effort ruled out for offside when smashing in the rebound from Porro's effort that hit the woodwork, and then played in Johnson for an effort, but didn't have much to work with otherwise. Again, and I say this, Sonny through the middle for me, I'm never going to be fully convinced all the time. It suits certain games, and it could have suited this game had we have used the ball better and played more long through balls. And by long, I mean along the floor, not this over-the-top stuff, because he has the pace to burn. We just didn't utilise it well enough, and he gets a bit isolated at times because he's not a hold-up player. Then Brennan Johnson, involved in some bright moments with good movement, but just couldn't force the ball home. including controlling and firing an effort that Martinez saved from point blank range. And I think with him, we know he's had a disrupted season so far, so it's just going to take a little bit of time for him to be fully confident. So let's talk about the subs. Højbjerg brought a different kind of game in the midfield to Bentancur in his absence, but still played some probing passes. He forced Martinez into a flying save with a shot from outside of the box. And as I've said, it's becoming a bit of an element of Højbjerg's game. He does the leg work, the work that nobody else wants to do. And he's contributing with assists and goals himself, but just doesn't play regularly enough, long enough. Oliver Skipp. There's a bit of a frustrating one, Oliver Skipp. He's not getting the game time. I personally think if we have enough injuries cleared by January, enough players back, and we can maybe get one in, I think we should allow Oliver Skipp to go on loan. He had a great time at Norwich. There's plenty of Norwich fans that say it's one of the best signings that they'd had in recent years when he was on loan. And I think that's what he needs now. It's not happening for him at Spurs for whatever reason. I think they probably won't allow him to go because of the homegrown scenario. And look, he's a good player. He's just not getting enough minutes. So when he comes on, he's not getting much game time. It takes him too long to go into the game. He's then making hurried decisions. And it's not the Skippy that we're used to. And unfortunately, that injury that he had last season has kind of just disrupted things for him because it allowed other people to get in ahead of him. And then we did see Alejo Veliz. He replaced Lo Celso for the final minutes because, let's face it, if Lo Celso had played any longer, he might have passed out. But yeah, all in all, I'm disappointed because we've had 3 losses on the bounce and we've got some big games coming up against Man City, Newcastle, West Ham. It's going to be a difficult time for us, but from this game I did see good signs that the players that can come in when they get a run of games, when they are fully fit, will make a pretty good team. In an attacking sense, we were great. And once again, it was one of them for large parts of the game. We did what we needed to do. It's just those few moments, those lapses in concentration that cost us. And when you don't have your starting, well, barely any of your starting lineup out there, it makes things difficult. Like if we just look at that team, again, so the people that are normally guaranteed starters, you would say Vicario, guaranteed starter. Porro, probably. Royale, no. Ben Davies, no. Udogi, yes, he's kind of claimed it for himself. Kulusevski, yes. Bentancur hadn't been up until this point because of injury. Lo Celso, no. Brian Hill, no. Sonny, yes. So of that starting lineup, 4 of them have been regular starters since the beginning of the season. So I suppose we kind of have to give a little bit of leeway there and expect that we're going to come undone. Had we have come up against lesser opposition this week, or say we'd played Wolves this week, I think even with Bentancur going off, we'd have won the game. But I think Villa was a step too far, and I think they're further ahead than people give them credit for. So, you know, what can you do? But I see bright things. Lo Celso definitely looked good, so I have the confidence in the coming games that he can step up for us. Bentancur, I'm hoping the injury's not too bad and he comes back very quickly. But hopefully Sarr will be back very soon. But yeah, I think it's bright things and Postecoglou's just going to have to use these guys and trust them a bit more. But I'm glad that they still tried to stick to the Postecoglou way, because I think it's very easy for fans to say, look, you need to change the way you're playing because you haven't got the players that you had. But the second you start doing that, it changes the mindset of the team. And then when everybody else comes back in, gradually, they're playing with these players that have got a different mindset, and you need everybody to be singing off the same hymn sheet. Everybody needs to be pushing in the same direction. And his style of play is clearly rubbing off on a lot of these players. They're coming in and they're trying. And I think at the moment it's just fitness really that's holding them back, and those lapses of concentration, which again probably come from the fitness because they're exerting so much energy. If you go back and watch the first 15 minutes of the game, you will see Brian Hill relentlessly running from player to press and press and press. You can't do that for 90 minutes when you haven't really been playing a lot. They'll be cramping up. They'll just be tired. But I appreciate the effort. I get that it's disappointing because it's 3 in a row and we know we've got some very difficult games coming up. And, you know, there's not any sign of any of the big boys coming back. You know, Maddison, Van der Ven, their long-term injuries. It is what it is. We will deal with it. But we know these players that are playing right now are going to grow in confidence. They're going to be better. Then people will start coming back into the squad. And then by that time, hopefully, if we have to rely on anyone coming in from the bench again, we can rely on them. Because at the moment, our bench is pretty much made up of youngsters and people that have not played a lot. So there you go. I think there's positives to come. So let's not get too downbeat on these losses. And really, did we expect to be having this good a season when Ange first come in? No, we thought it would take time. So I think that we need to just, take the rough with the smooth. We were told when Ange came in that there will be moments where it falls apart. He himself said when he come in, it's not all going to be smooth sailing. It's going to take time. He's got to make his signings over the next 3 or 4 windows. But because these early signs have been so good, and even with players that people had written off, that have come good, and the performances that some of these guys in this replacement squad have been putting in, just tells you that if we can do that this quickly with players that he might not have wanted, imagine what this Spurs team is going to be like when he gets the people in that he actually wants. So there you have it. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed that one. I have been Kieran from Speaking Spurs. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. And until next time, come on you Spurs.